When Donald Trump launched a new wave of trade war against China, many thought it would be a simple waiting game. After all, China exports nearly $600 billion worth of goods to the US annually, 15% of its total exports. On the surface, it seemed obvious. They couldn't survive without their biggest customer. But what happened next stunned the world. Rather than backing down, China retaliated immediately. They matched tariffs, cut off key exports, and sent a bold, unambiguous message: we won't be bullied. Yet this defiance raised a critical question. How can a country so reliant on exports survive without its primary buyer? The truth is, behind the scenes, China has been quietly rewriting its economic playbook. Over the past decade, it has shifted from being a consumer-driven economy to an investment powerhouse. Nearly 40% of its GDP is now reinvested annually, almost double that of any other major nation. And the results are starting to reshape the global landscape. Chinese companies are no longer just catching up, they're taking the lead. BYD has surpassed Tesla to become the world's largest EV maker. TikTok has become one of the fastest-growing social platforms globally. And Chinese brands are rapidly moving up the value chain. No longer content to remain the world's factory, they want to run the factory. China isn't just trying to survive without America. It's trying to prove it can lead without it. But is this real economic resilience or just smoke and mirrors? The headlines paint a contradictory picture. On one hand, China's property sector is crumbling. Its population is aging rapidly, and millions of young people remain unemployed. On the other hand, megafactories continue to rise. High-speed rail links stretch across the nation, and advanced technologies no longer come exclusively from the West. So which version of China is real? The answer is both. For decades, the West has told itself the same story, that China's rise was dependent on Western demand. Since the 1970s, this narrative held true. China used its massive labor force to become the world's factory. It built iPhones for Apple, stocked Amazon warehouses, and attracted trillions in foreign investment. Between the 1990s and 2000s, China's GDP growth averaged nearly 10% annually. The system was simple: China manufactured, and America bought. But it also created deep dependency. By 2018, China's trade surplus with the US had soared past $400 billion, sparking growing concerns in Washington. How could an authoritarian rival control so much of the global supply chain? Meanwhile, the US lost over 3 million manufacturing jobs between 2001 and 2017, fueling political backlash. Chinese companies flourished in America, grabbing market share, cutting prices, and scaling fast. But US companies couldn't do the same in China. Critics accused Beijing of playing dirty, subsidizing industries, manipulating prices, and protecting domestic champions from foreign competition. Calls to confront China grew louder, and in 2016, Trump won the presidency on a promise to do just that. Once in office, he acted fast, slapping tariffs on hundreds of billions of dollars worth of Chinese goods. The goal? Force companies to reshore production and protect American manufacturing. But this wasn't just about trade, it was about technological supremacy. The US blacklisted Huawei, cut off chip supplies, and tried to halt China's tech rise. The tensions didn't stop when Biden took office. He left the tariffs in place, signaling bipartisan support for decoupling. By 2025, under a second Trump administration, the conflict escalated again. New tariffs targeted EVs, solar panels, batteries, and key tech components, some as high as 100%. The message was clear: America is done being dependent. But this time, China responded differently. Gone were the cautious negotiations of 2016. This was a new China, bolder, more confident, and ready to push back. It slapped its own tariffs, banned rare earth exports, and blacklisted US firms. The trade war had evolved into something much bigger, a battle over who gets to shape the future of the global economy. China knows what the world suspects. A giant built on exports can't survive if the world stops buying. That's why, over the past decade, China has quietly re-engineered its economy from the ground up. At the center of this shift is a strategy called dual circulation, introduced by Xi Jinping. The goal is simple: create an economic system that's resilient, self-sustaining, and less vulnerable to Western pressure. Here's how it works. Internal circulation focuses on domestic growth, turning China's 1.4 billion citizens into the main driver of its own economy. It's about boosting household consumption, strengthening local supply chains, and investing in homegrown tech. External circulation keeps global trade alive, but diversifies away from the West. Instead of relying on the US and Europe, China is deepening ties with the global South Asia, Africa, Latin America, and the Middle East. And the numbers are starting to reflect this shift. In 2024, domestic consumption accounted for 45% of China's GDP, more than double the contribution from exports. For the past decade, household spending has fueled at least half of China's GDP growth. Chinese consumers are buying Chinese EVs and Chinese electronics, and even Chinese luxury goods. But there's a catch. Compared to other major economies, Chinese household spending is still low. In places like the US, consumption often exceeds 60 to 70% of GDP. In China, families are cautious saving for healthcare, retirement, and education, partly because China spends less than 1% of its GDP on social safety nets. That's among the lowest rates in the world. Meanwhile, China's property market remains in crisis. Home values have declined steadily since 2019, with prices dropping 4.5% in the past year alone. Its population is shrinking too, birth rates are falling below death rates, setting the stage for one of the fastest aging workforces on the planet. So while domestic consumption is rising, China still relies heavily on factories, exports, and investment. But the pivot is real, even if it's slow. China isn't aiming to end trade with the world. It's preparing to survive without depending on it. A crucial part of this strategy is shifting trading partners. Back in 2000, America bought over 20% of China's exports. By 2023, that figure had dropped to 15%. But overall, China's global export share kept growing. The difference? The buyers changed. Southeast Asia, South America, Africa, they're all filling the gap. Today, Asia is China's top trading partner. How did China do this? Through the Belt and Road Initiative, a $1 trillion project launched in 2013 to build railways, ports, and power plants around the world. Over 140 countries have joined the initiative by 2024, representing nearly 75% of the global population. It's not just about infrastructure, it's about influence, securing long-term partners and embedding Chinese goods into the global economy. In 2024 alone, Asian countries bought over $500 billion worth of Chinese exports. China has become the top trading partner for South Africa, Brazil, Indonesia, and many other BRICS nations. The shift is clear. China is no longer just a supplier to the West, it's becoming the hub of a new global trade system. But trade alone isn't enough. China is also investing heavily in advanced technology and infrastructure. Since 2018, it has poured over $500 billion into research and development. It's subsidizing strategic sectors, trying to outcompete the West by independently producing the world's most advanced tech. When the US banned chip exports and sanctioned Huawei, many thought China's ambitions would crumble. But in 2023, Huawei unveiled a homegrown 7nm chip, a breakthrough fueled by massive state-backed investment. Chinese chipmakers like SMIC are catching up fast, while BYD continues to dominate the EV market, outpacing Tesla since 2022. Meanwhile, China's infrastructure is unmatched. Its high-speed rail network now stretches over 40,000 kilometers more than the rest of the world combined. It produces 1/3 of all manufactured goods globally, more steel than it needs, more solar panels than it can install, and more EVs than it can sell domestically. To the West, this looks like overcapacity, a looming economic problem. But to China, it's a weapon. By flooding the market with affordable goods, China makes the world more dependent on its products. Europe needs Chinese solar panels. American EVs need Chinese batteries. Asian construction needs Chinese steel. The more China produces, the harder it becomes for the world to say no. This strategy is powered by state-led capitalism. But it comes with risks. Unlike in the West, where private capital drives innovation, much of China's growth is fueled by government spending, often with borrowed money. By 2026, China's debt-to-GDP ratio is expected to surpass 100%, raising concerns of overbuilding and economic inefficiency. Ghost cities, idle factories, underused rail lines, these are the growing pains of China's transformation. The U.S.-China relationship is no longer about mutual benefit. The era of China makes, America buys is ending. China is building new factories, forging new trade routes, and creating new alliances. It's investing trillions into its own tech sector, feeding its own consumer market, and constructing an economic machine designed to weather any storm. But that doesn't make China invincible. It still faces real challenges: a struggling property sector, cautious consumers, technological gaps in some areas, and ballooning debt. What China isn't doing is retreating. It's rebuilding quietly, methodically crafting a parallel global system less exposed to U.S. pressure and more embedded in the global South. This isn't just about tariffs or trade anymore. It's about a new world order, one where the U.S. may no longer call all the shots. The era of American-led globalization is fading. And the question isn't whether China will survive. It's how the rest of the world will adapt.